Hello, everybody. Welcome to another adventure in history. Hope that you're having a good one. It's been a. It has been what can only be described as a day for me. It is. Oh man, um, the week. Yeah. I won't go too far into it because nobody comes here to hear me gripe about stuff. I mean, I hope you don't come here to hear me gripe about stuff. I hope that the potential historical content and the learning value is the draw for the channel. But I don't know. Maybe not. So, yeah, the show is Adventures in Balhaefornia. Adventures in History. I'm still out of it. If you were with me on Tuesday, still kind of riding that not necessarily feeling very much awake kind of thing. But we're here. We're going to talk about history. And got some interesting stuff tonight. So last stream we talked about Japan, and that started a new phase of streams. So we are now in phase 13, which is the 8th century, or the year 700 through 799, basically. So that chunk of time where we're going to be talking about all the different populations of the world and what's going on in their particular frame of reference for this particular century. So tonight we're going to talk about three groups of people, specifically looking here kind of at a general, broadly Northern Asian approach. And one of the things that is worth mentioning here as a just sort of a point, as we move forward in time and centralized governments and authorities and things like this begin to spread out, we're going to be able to get more sort of narrowed, focused history streams like this. Whereas if we went back 2 or 3 phases ago and just talked about Northern Asia and this region over here, it would have mostly been a description of a whole bunch of tribal peoples that were potentially not even necessarily very much organized. They were still perhaps even fully nomadic around that time. So we're getting to the point now where states are becoming the norm, especially here in this sort of northeastern Asia chunk. We're being visited by the puppy. Hello, puppy. Oh my goodness. It's got itchy little ears. Oh, yes. The puppy is just here getting her head scritched. Oh, my goodness. Oh, yes. And now wants her booty scritched. Oh, yes. Itch the booty. Such a mess. And now she wants me to scratch her back. Oh, my goodness gracious. Such a spoiled dog. Yeah. She has been having separation anxiety lately, fairly bad. What's up, Green Herring? My wife went with a friend to a concert on Monday night, and my wife left the house about 4 in the afternoon and didn't come back until a little bit after midnight. So the dog was without my wife for about 8 hours. And I don't know if that dog could have survived another 45 seconds. She's so attached to my wife. It's sort of funny and endearing at the same time. But I know it's basically forever. It's like a puppy eternity. And like, I'll go to work during the day for 8 hours and she just goes to take a nap and, messes around with my wife. So I am not the favoritist human, but you let my wife leave. Oh my goodness. So like my wife went to the concert Monday, and then Tuesday, when I got home, she said, I need to just run out real quick and get some groceries and stuff. And she was gone maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And as soon as she left, the dog just had a moment of abject sadness, just the crushing, soul-rending emptiness. And she stood at the door of the living room and just stared at the door of the living room, like waiting for my wife to come walking back in. It was so sad. So the dog has had a bit of a traumatic last few days and is being very possessive, and wanting lots of affirmation. And again, she's also scared of her own farts, so she'll fart and then want to be consoled. I've never seen a dog afraid of their own farts, but she is. How's it going, Green Heron? I hope you're having a good one. Yeah, so we're going to talk about Korea here. So there are two kingdoms in Korea, and then there's a new kingdom here in northern Asia that we'll talk about that has a little bit of a modern tie-in. So this will be bringing us a little bit closer to stuff that is recognizable in modern news if you keep up with stuff. So let us start in Korea with a new kingdom. Let me get to my notes. And this is the kingdom of Balhae. So Balhae is a new kingdom that is going to mostly start up out of the remnants of an older Korean power. So if we look at our map here, this region right here is where we're going to be looking at. And if you have been with us on previous streams where we've talked about Korea, you might look at this region and go, oh, that's where the kingdom of Goguryeo was. And that's accurate. This northern kingdom of Korea named Goguryeo had been one of the three kingdoms and it had at one point been the largest and most dominant of the Korean powers and had a good run for about 450, 500 years. This big kingdom up here of Goguryeo had been pretty powerful, but at the end of the last stream, our Chinese emperor down here, the Tang dynasty, decided that Goguryeo had to go, and they get wiped out in 697. But in 698, there are going to be some movements here, and specifically a ruler named Daejeong is going to start putting back together the power base here in the northern part of Korea, and he's going to go on to be the founder of the Kingdom of Balhae. Yes, we know where Bollywood films are from, right? So, who is this Daejeong guy? It's actually a really good question, and we don't rightly completely know. There are a lot of different theories as to his individual heritage, and we're not 100% sure one way or the other. Some people say that he was a sort of kind of like the last big general of Goguryeo, the previous kingdom of northern parts of Korea, and he had some connection to the old army of Goguryeo, and this is going to be the way that he manages to bring all of these people back together in 698. That's a bit of a stretch, mostly because the really big wars that were sort of wrecking Goguryeo are going on in the 660s and the 670s, and if he was already an established general at that point in the 670s, 680s, he would probably be exceedingly old by the time that we roll around to the 690s, because especially in Korean military history, you don't get a generalship if you are a kid, and they really kind of considered you a kid until you're like 30s, late 30s or early 40s even, you know. So if he was in his 40s during the 660s, he'd now be in his 70s, and we know that this guy was around until at least 719. So did this guy live then, you know, until he was 99? I mean, I guess it's possible, but I don't think that's particularly the best guess. Other people say that he was part of a group of nomadic people called the Mohe. Semi-nomadic, I should say, not fully nomadic. So if we look back at our map here, you see right here we have this group of people called the Mohe, and they were a tribal people that are going to be in the larger family of Tungusic people groups. They and here the Jurchen are going to be sort of, again, semi-nomadic. They're kind of horseback, plains wandering kind of people, not very much agriculture. And there's a possibility that our guy, Dai Jiyong, was one of their sort of chieftains, and that was sort of the position that he used to kind of catapult himself into this position. Because we know that there are a lot of Mohe people that end up in the kingdom of Balhae. And it's a fair guess. What's up, Tuna? Good to see you, my friend. Hope you're having a good one. We don't know, though. It could also be that he's just of Korean of heritage, and he wasn't really anybody, but he was just somebody that got a little bit of local power and then managed to expand that. Unfortunately, during this period of time, our sources for Balhae are pretty sketchy at best. Most of this is coming from the southern kingdom of Shilla, which we'll talk about a little bit more in just a bit, or from the Tang Dynasty of China. So, as always in ancient history, if you're not writing the source and someone else from outside of your culture is writing this source, we're going to have to take that with the appropriate level of bias. It's just the way that it is. Anyway, but Dai Jiyong in 698 is going to establish the kingdom of Balhae, and then by 699, he's going to get sort of international recognition as the emperor of this area. He's going to change his name to King Go, just Go, as his ruling name. And this is going to be a kingdom of mostly Korean peoples. So the cities that he has, that he's ruling over, are mostly ones that would have been, in the kingdom of Goguryeo. Now, the population has shifted a little bit because of the migration of both these the Mohe tribes and also Khitan people, and also some people from the Tang Dynasty in China. So there's a little bit more of a broad ethnic group in Balhae. So it's not as what we might call monolithic or monoethnic like Goguryeo would have been. And this is an important thing to mention here as well, because what this shows in this area is that the concepts of centralized government and the ideology of having one king or one emperor that can rule a large disparate group of people is becoming more acceptable. Whereas, again, you back up a couple hundred years and these people would have never lived in cities. They would have been semi-nomads. They would have been, much less interested in centralized organization. The only way that they would get together is if some big warlord rose up and united everybody through violence. So what are we going to do? Well, if you're going to be a king, you've got to make yourself a capital. So he makes himself a capital at a place called Danhua, and it's up in the mountains. So it's fairly defensible. If we kind of zoom in here, Danhua. That's in China. Anyway, we'll just look at it. It's right over here up in the mountains. So we've got this sort of whole region right here that's under our control. We're going to make ourselves a capital. We got to start making friends. So we're going to reach out to China and send ambassadors to China and see if China will send ambassadors back to us, because China received a whole bunch of ambassadors. And of course, at this point, if we just look at size and cultural power, the Tang Dynasty in China is going to be the sort of the sun of this whole solar system of kingdoms. They're going to be the gravity well at the center that has cultural and political power to a certain extent over a lot of these different sub areas. They're definitely going to be at odds with a lot of these people. So if China recognizes you by sending you an ambassador, or an envoy or something like this and opens up direct contact with you, this is a pretty big deal. This is also going to go a long way towards legitimizing your particular position, because then China will expect to be able to talk to you, not somebody else that, manages to usurp you. And that's a benefit that you can sort of put on your resume, like officially listed as envoy of China, right? That kind of thing. So they get recognized by the Chinese, and they're also going to reach out to the big sort of reformed Turkish Khaganate. Now, the Turks are going to play into the discussion tonight in a couple of different ways. If you were around last time, you'll know what happened to the Turks. But for those of you that might not have been around, just as a bit of a refresher, there used to be originally one big Turkish Khaganate that stretched basically all the way from over here by the Caspian Sea, all the way over here to the borders of Korea. That would have been back in the late 500s, early 600s. But then China got involved, and they split into the Western Khaganate of Go-Turks, which was over here, and then the Eastern Khaganate of the Go-Turks that was over here. And then China played a lot of politics, and China at the end of last stream, when they were on this big expansion, ended up wrecking the Western Khaganate and basically absorbing the Eastern Go-Turks. But right at the end, the Go-Turks are going to rebel and reestablish what was known as the Second Turkish Khaganate, and they sat sort of right around in here. And our kingdom of Balhae is going to send envoys out to them and say, hey, look, we should be friends, and you don't like China, and we're right here on the border with China, and if we need somebody to help us beat up on China, and you need somebody to help you beat up on China, maybe we could be buddies, because again, China is big and scary. And the Go-Turks, of course, give them recognition. You've always heard that it's nobody's business but the Turks. Well, that's fair. How they ran their kingdom was their own business, but China definitely tried to get involved in it. At various points in the first Turkish Khaganate, and then especially with the Eastern Turkish Khaganate, China really effectively was the crowner of the Turkish Khagan. You weren't really going to be able to rule if China didn't give you their blessing in the first place. So I know that kind of goes against the song, but them's the bricks, right? Not everybody gets to pick their own ruler, especially when you're swearing fealty to China. So Dai Joyong gets some recognition, gets some international stuff going, and the biggest thing that's important for him is that he manages to make a kingdom that is stable enough so that he can peacefully pass the throne down to his son. And I know that seems like kind of small beans, like congratulations, you're a stable enough country that you can establish a dynasty. But in this region, at this time, that was a pretty big deal, right? Not everybody is going to just easily be able to pass down ruling property rights and stuff like this to their kid. So Dai Joyong is going to get old and die. He's going to pass the throne to his son, whose name is King Mu. Yep. Now, one of the things that is kind of frustrating about doing research for especially Northern Korean dynasties around this time is there just aren't a lot of pictures, and especially they don't like making statues of their rulers, and they don't really make a lot of images of their rulers. So there's not really a lot of stuff that I can show you. So I got kind of not desperate, that's not the right word, but I broadened up my scope for gotta show pictures. So let's just look at this cool picture right here for a second. And this is a warrior of Balhae, but specifically it's a monkey dressed up in a warrior's outfit. So there we go. This is the monkey warrior. How could we learn without pictures? I know, Green Herring. I try. What's his name? King, or is that the title? Yeah, his title is King, and Mu is a regnal name. His birth name was different. So when he became king, he took on the title King, and then after he died, he was given the regnal name Mu, which is sort of an odd thing where you end up getting a regnal name after you die sometimes, which is interesting, but okay, cool, I guess. But yeah, how could we learn without pictures? So here we go. Here's a monkey dressed up in Balhae armor with a nice cool sword and a nice cape. Return to Monka, right? So there we go. There's a picture for you, mostly because I really couldn't find anything else. And I tried. It's very frustrating because I like showing pictures. I really do. And especially, I know from teaching for so long that it's good to have visual cues and references and stuff like that. And I also know that this is not the world's most attractive image to look at. So we can we can spice that up a little bit with some history stuff. All right. So what's up with this King Mu guy, and what is he going to do? His biggest accomplishment is going to be expansion. He is going to push back the boundaries of Balhae substantially. And he's going to do this at the expense of a lot of the people that he's kind of related to, perhaps. The Mohe tribal people especially are going to feel kind of a lot of this wrath. So up in this region, right around here, which is getting into where we would refer to as Manchuria, he's going to expand up into this direction and fight against a lot of the Mohe people up here and absorb them. He's also going to move up north in this direction. There's a sort of a big horseback nomadic group up here called the Khitan people. He's going to fight against them. And over here, moving out towards the north and west, he's going to fight against the Go-Turks. And you go, but wait, I thought that his dad just established this treaty with the Go-Turks. Here's the thing. The Go-Turks were getting their butts kicked. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. And, you know, if your allies that said that they could back you up are clearly not going to be able to back you up, are they really your allies? Right? Like, if they voided the contract, is it okay to go take their land? And King Mu says, yeah, they can't save us from China, so we'll just go expand in that direction. And Balhae gets a lot bigger. It starts to encompass basically all of this region right here. And that's a bigger state than Goguryeo ever was. Even Goguryeo at its largest was maybe about this big, but they've added lots of territory to that potential zone of influence, and especially zone of taxation. So Mu's going to expand quite a bit. Now, this does cause quite a bit of tension, specifically with the neighbors, like the Kingdom of Shilla. So Shilla is situated mostly down here on the southern part of the Korean Peninsula. They had been instrumental in the collapse of Goguryeo, and they were not really excited about a new, powerful, centralized empire to the north of them. They had a little brief period of time where sort of nobody was right at their doorstep with a potential army, and they really enjoyed that. But now here comes Balhae under King Mu, and he's expanding again. And not only is he expanding, but he's getting bigger than Goguryeo ever was. And that's proving to be problematic, and they don't really like this. The Chinese dynasty Tang, who had territory all the way up to this region right here, are also not going to... Oops, sorry, did I even show you where I was? Like right around in here. They're not going to be pleased with this because they don't like this idea of a newly reformed, powerful Northern Korean empire. The Tang dynasty during the 600s had sent 5 or 6 different invasion forces into this region and lost several whole armies to the Koreans in the north in Goguryeo. It took them a concerted effort with the Shilla and lots of soldiers from China to finally get rid of Goguryeo. And it was a very costly defeat in many situations, and they barely even won even then. And they were in such bad shape after they won that Shilla actually managed to gobble up some more territory while China couldn't project its power any further. So this is, again, becoming an issue. Like, these are going to be problem children up here. So what do we do? Well, China's going to start initially by sending them kind of like very politely worded warnings. Like, it's okay if you go fight other people, but you really don't need to start expanding towards us. And we've got some alliances with some people up in that way, and you really don't need to start messing with people that we have alliances with. And the Chinese are going to end up taking over some of the Moe people, and this is going to sort of be a trigger because, well, Balhae has a lot of Moe people living in the country, and they might even be Moe people themselves, especially the ruling family here could be Moe people. And this is going to be kind of like lighting the fuse here, because the Balhae are going to show up to liberate these Moe people, and then China decides it's time to go fight. So China is going to reach out to Shilla and say, hey, I know that at one time we had some alliances and we were fighting against Goguryeo. What do you think about teaming up again to take care of this Balhae group? And then the Shilla king was like, yeah, we can totally do that because we don't like them either. So there's a team up of Shilla from Korean Peninsula down in the south and Tang Dynasty China. And they send a force up into Balhae and they get beaten. And that's going to be kind of a shock to Tang Dynasty China because, again, like they're new. This is happening in like 729. They've only been a country for like 30 years. They shouldn't necessarily have this much power, right, to repulse an entire Chinese invasion force. And after they push the Chinese invasion force out, not only do they manage to take land along the way as they're pushing the Chinese out, but they also manage to put together a large enough navy to launch a naval raid into northern China over here. So launching from port cities over in Balhae territory, they're just going to float around the peninsula and make an attack into northern China's coastline up here. And this like really freaks out the Chinese because they're not used to being counter-invaded, especially not by sea. And Tang Dynasty kind of decides, you know what, we don't know how we feel about this new group of people. Are they going to be people that we have to like try to crush? They're starting to like gear up the big invasion, like put together the 50,000 man army and go up and like crush them kind of thing. And then Balhae makes a pretty savvy move here. They go, okay, if we're going to start doing stuff on the sea, we need an ally that also has ships. So Balhae reaches out to Japan. And they go, hey, Japan, we know that you have some contact with Shilla, but you're not doing so hot with them right now. And, you know, Japan was like, no, we're not really doing a lot. You know, we're not particularly very good friends with Shilla. But at this time, Japan needed help because they're expanding. The emperors at the time, actually an empress at this time, is really trying to centralize authority and doing some reform stuff. And a Korean friend, especially one that could potentially stand against Shilla, stands to make a good benefit and sounds like good progress on both sides. So they team up. So now we have Northern Korea and Japan. Are you not entertained? What's up, Aristotle and friends? We are talking about Korea. Welcome, welcome. I'm an adult. What's up, Nepalis? What's up? How are you all? If you do not know my friend Aristotle, you got to go give this guy a follow. He's a really great dude. He's a teacher and a professor of ethics and philosophy, and is a really smart dude that has a great stream. I know that a lot of people around here are already following, but if you're not, you totally should. So welcome everybody from Eris's channel. If you don't know who I am, my computer's still doing that weird double take thing. Hello, my name is Shane. I teach history at college and sociology at college as well, and my show over here is called Adventures in History. where we talk about historical stuff, and we do world history on Thursdays. Specifically, when I say world history, I mean we actually do talk about like world history, because this is the stuff that you don't get in, world civ, which is mostly Western civ, if we're just being honest. And tonight we're talking about Korea, specifically the kingdom of Balhae. And if you want an idea kind of what we look like here, here's you a nice map. So this is the kingdom of Balhae that we're talking about right now. And they're in a war right now with the Korean kingdom of Shilla. And Balhae has just made a treaty with the Yamato kingdom or empire of Japan. So pretty cool stuff. And we've got some questions in chat, so let me make sure that I catch up with questions. Shmonette, what's up? Good to see you, my friend. Hope you're having a good one. So was the animosity that has always been kind of there between Korean area folks and China area folks in place, but they had a common enemy? So what's interesting about this time period is that the animosity that we think of today is not really a historic thing insofar as way, way, way back in history. Most of the issues that come from modern day, what we might call, I don't know, what am I going to say here? Animosity. We'll just use the word animosity because I think that's a fine word. If we're looking at animosity between China and Korea and Japan, most of that animosity is going to stem from the modern period, specifically from about 1870 until today. So this is going to be mostly imperialist stuff where the Japanese took over, or then the Chinese took over, World War I and World War II period stuff. That's where most of the modern animosity comes from. In the ancient world, those people groups were much more closely tied, and while they might not have been like best friends, they still had quite a bit of connection. One of the things we're going to talk about in just a second when we get to this guy's kid is things just kind of level out and they start trading a lot more. It's mostly worry is what's driving them at this point. There's not any sort of larger cultural heritage of hate. It's just we're afraid that these groups are going to continue expanding and they're going to push into areas that are going to be productive areas that they're going to take from us. We don't want to be subservient to a foreign power. We don't want to lose tax base, that kind of stuff. It's not that the animosity that's around right now is much more economic and political and less ethnic and cultural. And I guess I could have said that at the very beginning of this definition and description, but it took me a little while to kind of get there. So, I ramble. What's up, Blue? Yes, we were talking about Korea. Nepalis is an adult. I'm so glad that you are. I told my students in class yesterday that there's actually no such thing as an adult. You just get better at faking adulthood the older you get. So that makes sense to me. Bum Lulz is an adult as well. Well, Bum, I'm glad. I'm glad you are. Onyx Linus is coming down the raid. Welcome, welcome. Hope you're having a good one. Lumpy is an adult. Proof. Behold my dishwasher. You're only an adult if you have cleaned the filter in your dishwasher. Because otherwise you're just a lazy kid that knows how to cut corners. So there you go. Dang, you have a dishwasher? Yamato! Exactly. Sorry, had the anime. Yeah, exactly. Right. Oh, your girlfriend said you should do that. So, Lumpy, perhaps here your girlfriend is an adult and you are becoming an adult. I'm just picking. If you're not following my friend Lumpy Dragon Potato, go give this guy a follow. He's a very kind, very entertaining streamer that builds amazing things in Minecraft and talks wisdom at people. And is just an infectious humor that appreciates all of my puns. So there we go. What if your dishwasher is a sink? Then are you the one true adult to rule them all? That's a fair question. Like if you have to actually do manual labor, but I don't know if that can fully define adulthood, because when I was a kid, I used to be forced to do dishes as a chore. So I would think that the line here is that if you are an adult, you currently do not have a stack of dishes in your sink that exceeds the lip height of the sink. So if you have dishes that are lower than the lip of the sink or are fewer than 4 days old, I think that you could probably be an adult. But if you have dishes that are 4 or more days old, or if the height of the stack of dishes has exceeded the lip of the sink, you are not an adult. Perhaps, and hear me out now, we're all just really big children. Oh, I admit that I'm a giant child. I am a giant child. And I don't try to hide that at all. I can just pretend to be an adult pretty well when I needed to. And green herring is smushing down the dishes. It's below the lip. It's below the lip. Good times, right? You learn lots of things in Adventures in History, like how to determine whether or not you're an adult based on dish height. But there are adults with Diogenes syndrome who live in squalor, but I guess they exceeded adulthood, are now in old adulthood. Oh, okay. So they've gone into the full out disconnect from society. Okay, so I think we could even modify this. So if because when I was a kid, sometimes I went and pouted, which was a disconnect from society, but then I always came back out. So if you have decided to basically throw in the towel on all society and you fully retreated and you can still care for yourself for your basic needs, I think we can call that an adult. I think so. Even if you don't clean up your house very much. It's more like instead of a giant checklist, it's more of a multipolar slide thing. Like you've seen maybe like a point here in the middle with about 10 to 15 radial measurements coming out of the center, and you have to have a certain area inside of your polygon to be considered an adult. Like, so you get to average out all of the different values and then draw your polygon into the area of it, and that's determining adulthood. No, it's fine. It's fine. This is perfectly okay, and I'm always happy to entertain tangents and even silly situations because there's fun to be had there, right? What's up, Uncle Bill? Yellow, y'all. What's up, Uncle Bill? Yellow to you as well. We are currently talking about this guy named King Mu. That reminds you, Shane Human Friend person, remember the urban monastic episode? It came to a very, oh boy, let's challenge that direction into it. Oh, really? Need to sneeze. Turns out that I needed to sneeze a few times. Goodness gracious. Okay. Well, it was one, and then I had to pause because sometimes when I feel like I'm going to sneeze, I know it's just going to be like one sneeze, and I do my one sneeze. But sometimes I sneeze, and then I kind of get into like post/pre-sneeze confusion, and you just don't know, like, am I going to sneeze again? Or am I not going to sneeze again? And you kind of have to wait for it to pass, because what I really hate is the sneeze and then the pause where you think everything is okay, and then like the blitzkrieg sneeze that comes in with a panzer unit after a very quick bombardment, and you don't know what to do. You're just like achoo, and you go, oh, okay, I think like that. I hate that. So I had to pause and wait to see. I'm a very odd person, and I overthink everything. I hope to hear the story behind the change in the monastic direction, and that's perfectly okay. You're the agent of change in your own life, so as long as you're happy, I'm happy for you, right? You're back. You needed to hear the space battleship Yamato 2199 theme. Hey, I understand that. First time you've ever heard someone overthink sneezing. Man, I overthink everything. Just hang around here for a little while and you'll hear some overthinking. If it's out there, I can overthink it. All right, so King Mu. We're going to get lots of stuff. So he's fighting this war. He manages to beat up Japan. Beat up China. He manages to invade China. He gets Japan on his side. China backs off. The Shilla back off. And then in 737, King Mu is going to die. But the kingdom is in good position, and he's able to pass the throne to his son, who is King Mun. So we just add an N and we get a new king. It's a sociologically very interesting story. Sure, sounds great. So what's up with this guy? Well, King Mun is a pretty good guy when it comes to ruling. How do we know this? Well, he takes over in 737 and he rules until 793. So if you rule for like 56 or so years, that's a lot of time to rule. And things in Balhae are pretty peaceful under his rule. They reach out to China and they say, look, man, we're not going anywhere, and you're going to have to just get used to us being up here. And China's like, we don't like the fact that you're up there, but we're also not really super interested in starting a war that is going to spill over into our territory. Like when we were going to go up there and beat you up on your territory, that was one thing. But if you're going to invade us, we just don't like that at all. Also, during this time, heads up, the Tibetans were causing a lot of trouble for the Chinese. So they didn't need another enemy to go fight. So King Mun is going to say, what if we just called it even? And what if we just opened some trade with each other? And what if we just chilled out? And China's like, okay, cool. Are you going to invade us again? He's like, no, I'm not really interested in invading your direction anymore. I might go north and some over to the east. And China's perfectly fine with that. So they just kind of call it even. And they're going to start establishing trade networks. But also what's really interesting here is that they establish scholarship networks, specifically with Buddhism, Buddhist scholars. They're going to be people from Balhae that go down to China and people from China that bring documents and Buddhist scriptures and teachings and scholarship up to Balhae. And this is a pretty beneficial relationship in both situations. They're both going to be able to benefit from this. But King Mun's reign is actually pretty uneventful. And that's sometimes the best story, right? Like, how do you know if your king is a good king? Nothing really happened under his rule, right? He didn't have to go fight wars. He didn't have lots of rebellions. He just took over and he made things better and people lived happily. That's the time of a great ruler. And remember, this guy is ruling for more than 50 years. He does a little bit of expansion. Mostly he spends time patching up relationships between his own nobility and sort of smoothing over historical grievances between family members, and really just consolidates the position of emperor. So, I mean, it's pretty powerful stuff, right? Have you ever caught yourself overthinking about overking? Absolutely. I do all the time. This guy's kids named King, it's Mun, like Mun. You could say Moon, but it's more like Moon. It's not Moon. So it's not the full like ooh. It's more like un. I'm not that great with my Korean to pronounce it or explain the pronunciation properly. I'll be honest, a lot of times when I get ready to do a stream, I'll have seen these people's names in writing and I don't necessarily know how to pronounce them. So I'll go to like Korean YouTube and search for this stuff and just listen to people say their names so that I know that I'm saying it the correct way, right? What's up, Raveland? Good to see you. Good to see you. I hope you're having a good one. You think certain leaders need to hear that? I do too. Like, it's okay to to not have a whole bunch of chaotic crap under your reign, right? It's perfectly okay for the people that are living during your life or during your reign to write, and they lived happily ever after, right? I thought the way you measure a great leader is how many of their own citizens were killed under their reign. Well, that is one way to get the title the Terrible, is to kill your own citizens. Now, if you're killing other people, you get the title the Great, right? So it depends on which side of the border they're on. So this guy's kid would not be named Moon. Probably not. This guy's kid is named Daiwanui, and he doesn't last very long, but I'm kind of spoiling the story a little bit. I mean, I guess it's actually time to go through. Wouldn't you love to see a picture of King Mun? I would love to show you one, and I can't. But what I can show you is this. And you're like, okay, that's a rock with some writing on it. Yeah, it absolutely is. You might go, oh, is this his tombstone? No, it's not. This is his daughter's tombstone. Because, again, it's really hard to find pictures for Korean stuff in the northern part of Korea. And if you think about it, and you go, why would it be hard to find pictures of things that are current day in North Korea? Well, it could be that North Korea doesn't let anybody in, right? It could also be that North Korea doesn't really have archaeology. They have propaganda. So everything that they publish can't really be believed. But this is King Mun's daughter's tombstone. And we know that this is an epitaph of hers because we've translated it, of course. And it's also not in modern-day North Korea. It's in modern-day China. So you can actually go see this if you really want to. But this isn't anything to do with King Mun except for, hey, look, this is, his daughter's thing. Honestly, it'd be really funny if he just changed one letter in his son's name. It would be. Like Mon, like M-A-N instead of M-U-N. Just keep the one letter thing going, like we're playing that. There's a word game where they give you one word at the top, and they give you a certain number of blanks, and then there's another word at the bottom, and you can only change one letter in each word, and you have to change the word at the top to the word at the bottom. But we're just doing that with rulers' names, right? That would be pretty fun. All right, so there we go. Now, that's all that we're going to get for King Mun because, again, he just had a peaceful reign and did his thing and took care of business. Now, he dies in 793, and things are actually going to go kind of bad for Balhae at this point. One of his sons takes over in 793, and this kid's name is Daiwanui. And the histories of the Korean rulers are typically written in chronicle form, where it says King so-and-so reigned in this year, and then it maybe gives a little bit of information about what that person did. Like if that person conquered something or built something, or if some particularly important thing happened during their rule, it might include it, like there was a great flood, or there's a big famine, or stuff like this. The chronicle for Daiwan Ui basically says he was crowned king and then became jealous and violent, so his ministers killed him. This guy was on the throne for less than a year, and got assassinated. So he had a nice rule and nothing bad happened. No, he had a horrible rule and they killed him within the year. He didn't even make it out of 793. He had one job. Just do what your dad did, right? Just sit there and be nice and run the country well. And he takes over and he's a horrible butt of a king, and he was jealous and violent, whatever that means, historically speaking. And so his own ministers assassinated him. So who do we get then? Well, we get a little kid whose name is Song. His regnal name is King Song, and he's apparently a very sickly kid, and he only rules about 3 months and then dies. So you have this really nice, cozy period of time in Balhae for the majority of the 8th century. And then they kind of stumble at the end. And we're going to have to put a bit of a bookmark on Balhae. And we'll come back to them at the beginning of Korean Stream next time around in phase 14. But for the moment, we're going to shift south a little bit and talk about the Kingdom of Shilla. So if we go back to images, this again is our Kingdom of Shilla at the beginning of the period of time. So again, this is around the year 700. This is good tea. Okay, so what's going on with Shilla? Well, they had unified the Korean Peninsula for a little while. And they were kind of the only big dog for a little while. And this was a pretty cool thing for them because they were kind of riding high. And they had made a rather beneficial arrangement with China. And for especially the first few decades of this period of time, the rulers are fairly short-reigned, so we're not necessarily going to go into all of the rulers at the beginning of the period. But there are themes here, and the biggest theme is China's kind of a buddy, and we could be friends with China. So they're going to make this alliance against Balhae with China. They're also going to convince China to give up some land. Now, without going into the entire stream of Korean history that we did last time around, China and Shilla had teamed up to take down the big kingdom of Goguryeo, which was sort of the predecessor of Balhae. And China held quite a bit of territory even inside the Korean peninsula. And this is stuff that Shilla wanted, but China was very intent on keeping until this period when the two sort of found a mutually appreciable friendship. China actually cedes land to them. So everything south of the Taedong River, including the city of Pyongyang, is going to end up in the hands of the Shilla. And this is a big deal. Because this is, a lot of territory that they had wanted for a while. The Chinese are going to work to try to prop up the ruling family in South Korea. There were some problems with poor leadership and nobles' rebellion and stuff like that. So China's going to step in to make sure that everybody knows we are friends with this royal family line. Then the next leader was the great leader Kim Jong-un, where he traveled back in time to make the fields grow with rice and wheat come from his community. Yeah, exactly. Kim Jong-un inadvertently blows up a nuclear device, causes a rift in time, gets sent back to Balhae, subsequently puts all of them under, his weird version of totalitarian dictatorships and wrecks northern Korean history all over again. Right? Oh, Kim Jong-un, that guy. He's so oblivious. Don't forget the rainbow parts. Oh, yes. Or the Hennessy. He brings back Hennessy to the ancient Koreans. I don't know if you all know this, but his grandfather, the Kim Il-sung, the guy that was the kind of like the original dictator of Korea, and his father Kim Jong-il were both incredible lovers of Hennessy. And at one point under Kim Jong-il's reign, so this is Kim Jong-un's father, at one point Kim Jong-il was the single largest purchaser of Hennessy in the world. In the world. They literally exported double-digit percentages of their entire production run for the year to North Korea for this guy. Kim Jong-il, yeah. You couldn't do a vacation trip to Uncountry. Dude, I would actually love to go to North Korea. There are some really cool historical sites in the country. There are burial tumuli there. There are dolmens there. There are really amazing temples that are currently in really bad shapes of disrepair, but that are still around. Oh, Oh, no, 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 no. I would never actually go there. I would just like to go there. It would be really cool if I could. I would never go to North Korea. Well, let me pause. There are a few ways that I would go to North Korea, but very few of them are likely. One of the scenarios involves a group of very benign aliens hovering over North Korea and abducting the entire jerk population of North Korea and allowing the regular people in North Korea that aren't jerks to make a very profitable country that is more free, and then I would be able to go over. Now, the benevolent aliens would not be torturing these people or abducting them because I don't really wish anybody pain. But the North Koreans would be allowed to make a much more stable democracy, and then the benevolent aliens would release the jerk Koreans into Korea at a rate of about one a month until the jerk Koreans were more fully integrated into an actual democratic group that was not run by jerks. And at that point, if the non-jerk Koreans wished to incarcerate or rehabilitate the jerk Koreans, they could do whatever they wanted to at that point. So I don't think the benevolent alien scenario is going to work out, but it's a possibility. Big Brother is watching, right? So, Shilla. We're being friends with China. China is helping prop up our ruling family. We're going to get some investiture even, where China is going to send vestments, so like actual gifts designated for royalty to Shilla. This is a big deal because, again, this is propping up the Shilla royal family. They're also going to be involved in this sort of big cultural exchange with Buddhism as a backbone. So much so that the Koreans start sending so many people to mainland China that are Buddhist scholars that there's a significant school of Buddhist thought that kind of comes out of the Korean world that gets fairly popular inside mainland China. So it's not just a one-way street here when we're doing cultural exchange at this point between China and Shilla, which is fairly fascinating because China had almost always been the donator of culture and had only rarely ever been the receiver of culture. But this is apparently a fairly mutual exchange of concepts, and this is pretty cool stuff. I think this is a good plan. I mean, I like the alien plan, Noger. I think it's probably unlikely to happen, but I like it. It's one of the only ways that I think North Korea could get some peace. Everybody go follow Noger. I really enjoy hanging out in this guy's chat because he reads stuff that makes you smarter. He spends most of his stream reading published philosophy papers that are fascinating, and there's always good conversation. It makes my brain wrinkle in the good way. Now, the guy that is most important for getting this going is a dude named Songduk. And you're like, Songduk? Not quite, but close. Songduk. Now, he is going to rule from 702-ish to 737. With some trouble in between. Not really big trouble. He's in control, but he's the guy that kind of gets this going. And he's going to be kind of an aces kind of dude, I guess, overall. He's got a pretty cool burial. This dude. If only benevolent aliens would come and solve all of our problems. Green Herring, I appreciate that concept. I wish that were the case. So here's a tumuli. And it's this really cool tumuli that's reinforced with these really sweet cut stones. So this is a fake hill, by the way. This is not a natural hill. His burial chamber is under here. They built a little gateway in the front, and they've got this guy out here. This is outside of the enclosure. This is an altar place in the front. But they do these really great stone reinforcements around the ring because as a false hill, it's prone to slipping and rain and stuff like that would erode it. but this is pretty cool. I love all this really intricate cut stone stuff. It's really fascinating to me to see people do this. So this is a pretty cool tumulus. A tomb worthy of a king. Now, this is actually built by his son, who we're actually about to talk about quite a bit more, because his son is like a big, important dude. And his name is Gyeongdeok. Now, this dude is one of the more important rulers of the Shilla kingdom probably ever. And he's probably going to be like, you hear people talk about what is the apex of certain kingdoms, what is the high water mark of certain empires, what is that people like using the term apogee, what is the highest star rise that they ever got to. This guy's probably the most powerful cultural center king thing, whatever you want to call it, of the unified kingdom of Shilla. Art is going to flourish under his reign. Buddhism is going to have a really great run of stuff. And he builds a bunch of cool stuff, like that tomb for his dad, but also this big thing. So this is a giant bell that he had commissioned for his father. And it's just absolutely beautiful stuff here. It's hard to tell, but this is inscribed with a whole bunch of really cool dedicatory stuff that talks about how cool his dad was. You've got these really great cast reliefs of like people praying with flames and flowers and stuff going on. You've got this really cool scroll work kind of stuff going on down here. The bell itself, by the way, is absolutely huge. I mean, you can see how big it is here. But this again is dedicated to his dad. It's called the Bell of Songduk, but it's made by his son. And this guy's pretty cool. So one of the things that he does, not just the really cool art stuff, he also goes pretty hard at reorganizing the kingdom, specifically doing a lot of reforms in the land area and with the government positions. One of the things that he's going to do is not necessarily a very well received sort of scheme, but it's one that works very well. He's going to switch away from using local nobles as governors for provinces. So if you live in a province, you are probably not going to be automatically in line to be governor of that province just because you're the richest person that lives there. Instead, you're going to have to suck up to the emperor, because he's going to kick out all of the governors and replace them with people that are his supporters. Now, this is very much more aligned with the way that China was doing things at the time, and it's pretty clear that he gets the idea from China, right? So I keep getting ads for local nobles in my area to chat with, right? There are local nobles in your area looking to rule you. Would you pay taxes to them? Click here. What up, Moose? Good to see you, my friend. So this is a pretty big overhaul of the government. You're not really going to get into a position of provincial governor unless you're friends with the emperor. Now, that makes some people pretty mad, because this governor position had sort of turned into a hereditary position for a lot of these nobles. They had lived in these provinces for, maybe 50, 100 years, right? And they're kind of miffed that they're not necessarily going to automatically get that position again. They've got to go kind of do diligence and obeisance to the emperor and then suck up to him and hope that he doesn't have a friend that's better off, to be this. To be fair, some people might be, yeah, exactly. Maybe they are, but I don't know, man. It's not really a lot of people's things. Another thing that he does, which is pretty interesting, that sounds kind of minor, but it's actually very practically important. He starts standardizing things. Specifically, he starts standardizing titles. Korea had a lot of different titles. If you were in the government, they had just dozens of different titles. And because there were other people that were not Koreans that were, that there were people that were not nobles that also had titles in the government, it got confusing as to who was in charge of what. So, like, you could have some civil servant people that are sort of, like non-commissioned officers that have more cultural power sometimes than a noble with a much more, auspicious title, yet somewhat less political or social power. And things got really confusing. And one of the things that caused a lot of trouble was who's going to be what and who gets what special title. And over the course of time, especially in the Shilla Kingdom, there had just been sort of a preponderance of these that have popped up. And you get this title and that title, and it's like, look under your seat, everybody gets a title. So one of the things that he's going to do is streamline all of this junk, and he's going to finalize exactly what all of these things mean. Right? So if you do this, you're going to get this title, and you're going to have this level of power, and you fit on the tree here. That means you report to these people, and you're on a horizontal level with these people, but you are above these people. And that really goes a long way to clarifying bureaucratic nightmares, because if you have a clear chain of command and you know what your title is and you know where you stand, this makes a lot of stuff much more easily solved when you have disputes, because you look at the chart, you go, okay, that person can tell me what to do, and then you go about your business, right? This is a big deal, and it seems kind of like, oh, he standardized titles, but it's a pretty big bureaucratic solution to a lot of these issues. He's also going to standardize things like place names. Now, this might seem odd, but Shilla had taken over the entire South Korean peninsula, right? So if we go back even 50 or so years prior to where we're talking about, there were multiple different kingdoms in this region. If we go back 100 years or 150 years, we have the Gaia Confederacy, we have the Kingdom of Baekje, we have Goguryeo. So a lot of these places had a name that they had used under one kingdom, and then some people still called it that. But then when this other kingdom took over, some people called this city this thing. And then when Shilla took over, there was a new name for it. So some of these cities were being referred to as like 3 different names, which, of course, if you're a mailman, that's got to be nightmare. They didn't have mail back then, but you know what I mean. So he's going to standardize place names. And he's going to be like, look, we're all in Shilla now. Here are the names of all of these cities. And here are the names of all of these places. So, boom. There we go. Marvel Captain America says the Confederacy in Asia. The Gaia Confederacy. And it's spelled the Gaia Confederacy, like this. And if you go back to the Three Kingdoms period and just a little bit before, there's a little pocket of cities that sort of sat right around here. They were mostly along the coastline, though they had a couple that were up rivers inland here. But the Gaia Confederacy sat kind of right around in here, and they were on the border with Shilla and Baekje. And they held out all the way until the late 6th century, early 7th century, before Shilla consumed all of them in the mid-7th century when they were in their unifying rush of things. So, yeah, there's a Gaia Confederacy, and it was just a loosely aligned group of small kings like that ruled city-states that usually acted in concert to do things like trade and stuff like that. So... So not the Confederacy of Independent Systems. No, not the Separatists. They did not have Count Dooku. He probably would have had his title stripped away from him. He probably didn't suck up to the Emperor enough. So are Koreans Chinese, What's the deal? I heard Chinese are actually Koreans. They're both different people. At various times, Korean people have lived in China and Chinese people have lived in Korea, but they've had a separate history going all the way back to the BC era. They're different people. If you go back far enough in history, everybody's the same. So if you went back to like 40,000 BC, the people that moved through China would eventually move their way up through Japan and into Korea as well. So that's like 35 or so thousand BC. You get a group of people that migrate out of China into those areas. And in that case, that's the closest that they've ever been to being the same people. But again, that's 35, 40,000 years ago. So, no, he would just lose his head. Yeah. He might need a hand first, though. Or two. All right. What else does this guy, Gyeongduk, do? Well, he starts building a whole bunch of stuff. Like the Bulguska Temple. Like this thing. This is a pretty famous image. So this is the Lotus Flower Bridge and the Seven Treasure Bridge. And these are these big, beautiful structures that are a part of a big temple complex called the Bulguksa Temple that he built. So basically all Asians originate from China. No, all Asians originate from India, but that's a whole other story. And even before that, all those Indian people originated from the Middle East, and all those people originated from Africa. So the migration route comes out of Africa, and there are two big proposed routes. The oldest one that we know existed is about 100,000 BC. That left Africa up the Great Rift Valley and ended up in this part of the Middle East. And a lot of people think that that first migration wave of modern humans died out completely. But there's becoming more evidence that they hung around longer than people thought. And I've been saying that since forever. But, you know, I'm the weirdo that gets out in front of stuff. The second big wave that comes out about 80 or so thousand years ago has a bit of debate. Some people say that it went up this way and into Mesopotamia and down. Some people say it left Africa basically straight across the Great Rift Valley here. At that time period, you could have walked on land across this land bridge. The water levels would have been substantially lower at that time period because this is during the Ice Age. And the Red Sea was basically just a big lake at that point, as was the Persian Gulf. So some people say they walked up the coastline here, up the Nile River, and then down into, it's like up and down and across into Mesopotamia. Some people say they came up this way and then went along the coastline here and came up into Mesopotamia that way. But either way, they're going to end up over here in India between 60 and 50,000 years ago. And they're going to actually hang out in India for a while because it's very big and the populations are very small. So you typically don't end up migrating unless there is resource pinching, you know, like where there's just too many people for the local area to handle the population. And then you move just a little bit further. So we're talking about maybe moving 20 miles a year or something like that, if that much. So India is a big migration hub, and out of India comes three big migration groups. One of them comes back up this way and becomes the Indo-European people that are going to go over to eventually migrate into Europe. There's one group that comes up here into sort of this larger Central Asian area, and there's one that comes along the coastline out this way, and they are the ones that get down here into Central Asia and China. They get to China about 50,000 years ago and hang out here for a while because, again, it's very populous. And then like 35,000, they start moving out this way to get to this part. And China is a big migration hub. They send one big group down this way that sort of populates all these islands in the Pacific. One big group that comes back up here that kind of becomes all of the northern Asian groups, and then one big group that goes up this way. And that group eventually comes over here to the Americas, sometimes around 30 to 25,000. global migration is one of my things, and I really love that stuff. It's one of the things that I try to keep read up on pretty well. There's a whole stream about that if you want to. It's like Adventures in History #2 or something like that. It's in the first collection. So if you go to my VODs, you can watch that again. I think it's... are you suggesting hominids migrate? Which is, of course, a pun on a line from Monty Python. But I didn't get to make any jokes in that episode. Do it again. Well, I don't know if I want to do stuff again. I could actually do that one again and have new data on it, because even just in the last 2.5 years, we've had a lot of archaeological discovery that's changed the migration pattern theories. So I could probably do that one again and have an update for it that would be valid, other than just like me doing things. Indo-European, is that really a thing? Absolutely. The Indo-Europeans are a group that sat basically, they came up out of India and moved into this region right around in here in the Caspian Sea area. And then they moved both south and north of this region. So across the sort of Mesopotamian northern region into Anatolia, and then into southern Europe this way, and then around the top of the Caspian Sea into the steppe region and into Europe this way. So this was the first one that came from the south, and then the sort of northern route came a little bit later. Now, there are already other hominins in Europe at that time, and also in Asia at that time. So the first big hominid group that moved out was Homo erectus, and they moved basically all over this area. So there are Homo erectus fossils all over here in China. But you had Neanderthal over here in Europe already when Homo sapien moved over. You had some Neanderthal over here in Asia. You also had Denisova over here in Asia, Floresiensis over here in southeastern Asia. So we were not the only hominid moving around at the time. But yeah, Indo-Europeans are absolutely a thing. And their original language group, the Indo-European language group, is one of the most important linguistic groups that's ever been on Earth. There are tons and tons of modern languages that have roots back in Indo-European. I mean, if you want to, you'd be interested in the update because you have no idea this was an active field. Oh, absolutely. Human migration and anthropology is an incredibly active field. And there are people that are literally digging on that stuff all the time. And especially now that we have DNA stuff where we can do DNA sequencing of remains, that has greatly aided migration stuff, because we can use haplogroup information from DNA to literally trace where people are going, because you don't end up with certain haplogroup genetic markers unless you have an ancestor that came from there or you came from there, right? So it's pretty fascinating stuff. I really enjoy that kind of thing. And I post a lot about all that stuff in the Discord. So like I am constantly reading news about new DNA evidence or new migration pattern stuff or new things being found. So most of the stuff that I post, or most of the stuff that I find about that, I end up go ahead and posting in the Discord under history and the news. So there's that. All right, let's get back to Korea. Not that I don't love all of this stuff. I absolutely love human migration patterns. That's totally one of my things. You heard they found dwarven burials like the people in Lord of the Rings that went extinct. I think you might be talking about the Hobbit people that are Homo floresiensis, that are over in Southeast Asia. Is it Florensis or Floresiensis? I think it's Homo florensis. I'm saying it wrong. The island is called Flores. And here we go. Yeah, it is Floresiensis. Okay. I just had to look it up. So these are like, they're from down here in Indonesia, and they found them on a particular island, and they are really short humans, like maybe 4 foot tall. And the leading theory behind why they're so small is that they lived on an island with limited amounts of game, specifically, mammals that could provide meat, mammals or birds or fish. And as an adaptation to their environment, they just started shrinking. And the ones that required fewer calories had an evolutionary advantage to the ones that required more calories. So they just kept passing on short genes until they ended up turning into like these really short little hobbit people. So we don't actually know a whole bunch about Floresiensis. We don't have too many bones of theirs, and I don't think we have any full skeletons. So the dwarves who delved too deep and found Mithril and Balrogs. What's up, Agni? How's it going, man? If you are not following my friend Agni, Evolve Yourself TV is the channel where you want to go. This guy, really smart dude, does some chess stuff that I really enjoy watching. He also does guided meditation and talks a lot about philosophy as well. So go give him a follow and get your mind right? Or now hear me out. They came from the core of the galaxy and we were really close to them. I don't think we're going to go into the alien theory, but that's okay. What up, Allie? Allie, I had some Vienna sausages the other day. So Vienna sausages and crackers for dinner. And I was like, who would appreciate this dinner? I bet Allie would appreciate this dinner. Go give Allie a follow. Allie Briggs Art is an incredible artist that has a lot of skill and is really fun to talk to. And she is my adopted sister. I'll just go ahead and claim it. So there we go. We have a lot of common background. So will we find elf people existed too? Probably not. I don't think we're going to find pointy-eared elf people, but you're just making a Warhammer 40k joke. That's why I missed it. I am Blue. I am not familiar with the Warhammer 40k universe beyond even just the most bare surface knowledge. Like, I know that there are Marines and then Chaos Marines and then like orcs, but I really don't know a lot about the individual elements of lore or stuff like that. So ate some chicken of the woods soup yesterday. Heck yeah, man. I'm not a big fan of mushrooms. I had an unfortunate experience with a mushroom as a kid, because I was out foraging, but I was foraging in the front yard off of the pine trees in my front yard and ate one of those big old gross yellow mushrooms that grows off the side of a pine stump, and then went and told my mom that I didn't think that mushroom tasted very good. She's like, "Where did you get a mushroom?" And I showed it to her, and then I had to go to the hospital and get my stomach pumped. And yeah, the tannins. Oh no, the tannins. Yeah, I have a bad relationship with mushrooms. If there is enough stuff around them that I don't get a really strong mushroom taste, I'm okay. And I know that they're really good for you. They're actually quite healthy for you. But like if I get too much of that mushroom taste, or if I get even a little bit of that mushroom texture, I just kind of like have, I don't know, like post-fungal stress disorder. That's how you feel with pickles or peppers. Oh no. Dude, I love both pickles and peppers and pickled peppers. So that's just horrible, Moose. I apologize. You're missing out, my friend. If you taste them, it ruins the food. Alas. And Blue is just laughing at all the jokes going over my head. In 40k, there are groups of space dwarfs that live in the core of the galaxy. And the reason why is that they are so short. Yeah, gravity. There we go. I get you now. Okay, cool. All right, let's try to get back on track here, because we still have quite a bit of stuff to cover, and I've been tangenting like mad. Another thing that our guy Young Duck builds is this really cool thing. So this is the Sukguram Grotto, which is one of the most famous places in South Korea today. It's this cave that's got a really cool series of waterfalls outside of it and a whole bunch of like landscaping and stuff. But you go into the cave and there's this really cool series of rock reliefs and this really big statue of Buddha. And this is all carved basically right out of the walls of the cave. So it's pretty cool stuff here. Really, really impressive. That goes a long way towards establishing a few things here, right? So the themes of Shilla at this time are actually things that can be described pretty well here. We see a lot of emphasis on artistic beauty, which shows that the kingdom is peaceful and stable because you don't get big art projects that are funded by the government if they're off killing folks. You see the prevalence of Buddhism. This, of course, is going to be a direct nod to the fact that the relationship with China was so strong and Buddhism was flourishing at the time. The fact that this is still around today, that you can still go visit this, is going to show that, again, the culture recognizes what's important to them, and they're going to keep this kind of stuff in good shape. By the way, this is kind of like right down here on the coastline, and some of these little hilly regions right down here. Pretty cool. I'd love to go to South Korea. One of my friends lived in South Korea for quite some time, and I got to go see a lot of this cool stuff, and I'm very jealous. All right, Chad, if we keep him distracted, we might or might not get homework. I never give anybody homework. Well, I do sometimes give homework. The homework assignment is always the same, though. The homework assignment, if I do give it, it is always do something nice for somebody and don't tell them that you did it. Because I think that's a good thing to do. It means you're doing it for the right reason. It also means that you're not doing it to seek gratitude, and little things like that can have really big impacts on people's day and their life overall. Do small people have that dwarven gene then? No, Floresiensis died out, and they did not pass on their genetics that we know of. I don't know if we have had any sort of DNA reference for Floresiensis genetics getting into modern humans. I don't think that's the case. I'm pretty sure they were dead pretty early on. All right, so he's going to die, unfortunately, pretty young, our guy here. But he's going to pass the throne to his son, and he gets buried in this cool tumulus. I'm a big fan of tumuli, by the way. I really like these tombs. If I weren't angling for a Viking funeral, I would totally want a tumulus like this. Like, build a big old hunk of dirt and put me in the middle of it and build a really cool stone fence around me. That'd be really friggin' cool. Holy moly. I don't actually know what happened right there, but I also don't know why my alerts didn't happen. But to whomever just gave that donation, thank you so much. That's remarkably gracious of you. I don't even really know what to say, other than thanks. So much appreciated, my friends. Distracting Shane is easy. Watch. Discussing films. Oh, I've already seen that junk. We're not gonna. No. I saw that earlier because one of the mods shared it with me, and the only response that I gave back was sending them a GIF of someone flipping over a table. I'm not following that, but that really burns my britches. We'll just say it that way. Thank you, anonymous donor. I greatly appreciate that. You are very kind. Okay, so Young Duck is going to die, unfortunately, rather young, and he is going to pass the throne to his son. and his wife is going to stay on as regent. But this starts a really sort of kind of a decline for the kingdom of Shilla. So again, Gyeongdok is going to be kind of like the apex of the unified kingdom of Shilla during this period. His son has a lot of trouble when he takes over. So first off, he takes over when he's 8 years old. And anytime you have an 8-year-old that is the head of state, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to challenge this, right? Because let's just be real, 8 years old is not old enough to run a kingdom. And his mom was acting as regent, but we all know how, I mean, misogyny is not a new thing. This is something that goes all the way back in time. So there were multiple rebellions against his son. I guess I can put his son's name up here. His son's name is Hyegong. Where's my notes? Notes. So King Hyegong. Now, if you're old enough to play with woodblock, you are old enough to build a society, right? Is this like, if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball? If you can build a Lincoln log house, you can build a functional bureaucracy. Right? So, tell that to Egypt. Grant he didn't last long, right? Yeah, pretty much. So the king now is Hyegong, and the sources of history are not very kind to this guy. So first off, anytime you take over a kingdom at 8, it's rough. Let's just be real. But let me be very careful here when I say this as a preface. I will report to this particular situation in the way that history reports this. Please do not read anything into my particular viewpoints of stuff as I describe how history describes this guy. So the historians do not treat this guy very kindly. And from a very early part of his reign, the chroniclers go out of their way to basically call him over effeminate. They say that he played with girls' toys as a child. They say that he spoke as a girl, and that he even acted as a girl. And in the chronicles of Korean history, this was not seen as a positive situation. They were very critical of him. And it is evident in many cases that his activity as he aged, when the effeminate behavior continued, was at least a partial cause for some of these rebellions that were started against him. He had to face 3 different rebellions before he even really got to be fully on the throne in his own right. The people at the time, especially the nobles, why are none of my alerts working? Did you all hear the alert right there? Like, did you all hear the dun 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 dun? Because I didn't. You saw it, but you didn't hear it. That's disturbing. So I don't really know what's going on here. Streamlabs has had a total poop out. Marvel Captain America, thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate it. Normally you would hear the Indiana Jones theme song, and it would go dun 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 dun. So I'll just do it for you. Thanks for the follow. I appreciate it. I heard about a race of these small people that talk about their small stature somewhere in the Yemen or something, so they might have survived in some way, but over time they got more absorbed in the modern humans. I am not familiar with the Yemeni group of people that you're referring to. I'm not saying that they don't exist, but I'm just not familiar with them specifically. I don't think that they would have a direct genetic tie to Homo floresiensis, rather. It looks like Floresiensis both developed in the region and died off in the region. So a hominid group, potentially either Homo erectus or Homo sapiens, made it out to Indonesia, and then that group over time evolved into Floresiensis, perhaps even Heidelbergensis. We're not 100% sure, I don't think, about Floresiensis. But to be fair, I haven't looked in the last few months, so there might be more data that I don't know about. But I don't think that they would have had any direct migrational ties from Yemen. So I don't think those two populations would have been linked. Now, it's possible that there was a small clade of individuals that were in Yemen, considering especially the regional geographic issues that might insulate a community where those people just became shorter and shorter and shorter, right? So it's possible that we had a system of parallel evolution here where the same kind of thing happened in multiple different locations through much the same processes, but ended up with Floresiensis in one location and then a clade of potentially individual, and again, I don't know about this Yemeni group, so this is pure speculation on my part. It could just be a small population of what we would still consider Homo sapiens that are just really short, or maybe some individual other member of the Homo genus in that particular area. Didn't hear or see. What's up, Chad Guy? Good to see you. No worries, kid. You have an entire kingdom to run with a bunch of historians watching you. It's all good. But Neanderthals share a link with us. Yes. It is mostly settled science, Chad, or Chad Guy. I don't know if your name is actually Chad. I should just call you Chad Guy because that's your username. That humans, modern Homo sapiens, and Neanderthals had a common ancestor, and the most likely proximate ancestor is Homo heidelbergensis. So that is the theory. So, and that comes from erectus. So you have habilis erectus, heidelbergensis, and then there's a branch. And you have heidelbergensis going one way, and it's neanderthalensis, and then sapiens is on the other branch. But we're close enough that our genetics were compatible for offspring, because most modern people that have any sort of European, Northern African, or Central Asian ancestry have Neanderthal genetic markers that are in our modern DNA. And we only know that because we've been able to find Neanderthal skeletons that are in good enough shape for us to run their entire genetic sequence. The guy that actually won the Nobel Prize for Science this year won it for a lot of work that he did with ancient hominid DNA, specifically Neanderthal and Denisova. And Denisova is another cousin of ours. We're not quite 100% certain exactly how that linked in. There are some people that say that Denisova is a third branch from Heidelbergensis. Other people say that Denisova came from erectus. So we're still kind of debating that. We don't have a lot of Denisova DNA. I don't know if we have their entire genome fully mapped yet. We really only have about 7 or 8 specimens of Denisova. We've got some teeth and part of a jawbone. And I think the ones that came from Southeast Asia were, like in China, we found a cave that had some Denisova stuff. And I think that was either an arm bone or a leg bone. I can't 100% remember. But we've got partial Denisova DNA, and we have enough to know that modern Homo sapiens, when we moved through Asia, interbred with Denisova as well. So if you have any Asian history, ancestry, you are probably going to have some Denisova group. Have you heard about these nomadic groups in the Philippines who go deep sea spearfishing and for generations now have second spleens and organs? Yeah. So they can hold their breath for like 10 minutes. Yeah, so those are actually modern Homo sapiens. They just have genetic mutations that have allowed for that particular stuff to happen. And there are several other cases like that, like the people that can hold their breath for a really long time. There are certain groups of people that are in like Andean ranges in South America, or the high mountain ranges in Africa, or the Tibetan area. You have little clades of individuals that have mutations that burn oxygen much more efficiently because they're in these really super high altitude situations where there's just not a lot of oxygen. You all have clearly stumbled upon one of my pet areas here with the genetic stuff, and I could ramble about this forever. But we need to get through Shilla, and because we still have to talk about the Uyghurs before we're done tonight, and we're already at 8:40, and I'm clearly going to run long, and I really didn't want to because I want to go to sleep. I'm tired. It's been a long day, but I love this stuff so much that I will. I'll continue talking about this stuff. No, it's fine. I love the tangents. I really, really do. And the fact that you all are interested in it is just like lighting a little fire under my butt because you ask good questions and I'm like, I know the answer to that. If you're interested, Chad, I don't know. I know that you are more of a recent follower, but I don't know how many people actually know this, but I try to save all of my VODs. So if you want to go to the VOD section on my Twitch page, I have organized my VODs in chronological order. So there's Adventures in History Volume 1, which is like episodes 1 through, I think, like 95 or something like that. And then there's Volume 2 that's more recent. But I know for a fact that the episode for Modern Human Genetics and Evolution is around, I think it's episode 2 or 3 or something like that. It's Hominid Evolution, but the goofy title is Dr. Strange Thumb, or How I Stopped Worrying and Learned to Love My Expanded Brain Case. I don't post them on YouTube. I know people say that we should, and Twitch used to have a way that you could basically just click one button and export stuff from Twitch straight to YouTube, but they don't do that anymore. You have to download it from YouTube, or download it from Twitch, and then upload it to YouTube, and it takes freaking forever. Where's the one on Ukraine? I think that one is in the viewer request group, Lumpy, but I'm not 100% sure exactly where it is. I thought you have to sacrifice 7 sheep to get through it. Probably so. Oh boy, the Uyghurs. Yeah. So like the people that the Chinese killing now, they've been around for 1,000+ years. So look at like it'll be in the first chapter or the first collection, and we went through all of human evolution from hominins all the way up through Homo sapiens. And then we talked about migration too. So that's like the next episode. If you want to look at all of that stuff. And as always, you can always join the Discord if you want to, where you can post questions. And during my free time, when I'm not quite so stretched out from having a pretty crappy day, I have much more time to elaborate and share links and stuff like that. So there's that. Lumpy, if you shoot me a message, I have the link straight to the Ukraine special episode that I can dig up and send you if you can't find it in the mess that is the Twitch interface. Okay, so Hyegong is in trouble. The kid is in a lot of mess here. There is a 4th rebellion against his reign, and he ends up getting assassinated in this 4th rebellion. And this is going to set off a period of really bad instability at the leadership position of the Shilla Empire. So the royal family at this point is basically killed, and the usurpers are going to find another noble that they put on the throne. That emperor rules for like 1.5 years or 2 years and then dies without an heir. So then there's going to be another group of families that take over. And in Korea, royal families, or especially imperial families, are so closely related to the larger bureaucratic structure that when you change royal families, you're changing a lot. You're not just changing out the emperor. You're changing out all of these ministerial positions. You're changing out all of the governor positions. So when this 3rd family takes over, this is the 3rd ruling family in 6 years. So like imagine having 3 presidential elections in America within 6 years and having to go through 3 completely separate regimes, right? So like the president takes over and they have to pick their whole cabinet and they pick all of their ambassadors and they get going. And then, about 2 years later, we have another election and a completely new president comes in who has to pick a completely new everything. And then about 3 years after that, we get another one who comes in and we have to pick completely new president and new everything and all of that. And it's just a crazy time here. So this particular, the third of the kings has a son, but the son dies. And then when he dies, the emperor does, the grandkid takes over. And again, this is like a kid that's basically super duper young, and he rules for like a year and a half and then gets assassinated or dies. We don't really actually know what happened to him. But what we're looking at here at the end of the 8th century with Korea is a substantial collapse from the high point of Gyeongdeok. This guy was a pretty powerful king that had everything going for him, had all this information exchange with China, had all this cultural stuff going. And then in the span of basically just the next 30 years, Korea in the south, that Shilla kind of falls apart at the leadership position. So that's problematic. Now, how old was he when he was assassinated? Haegong was at that point only about 19 or 20. So he wasn't even really fully established into his rule yet. He had only really been ruling by himself for a couple of years. So like again, he had 3 rebellions against him that he and his mom and some of the generals had to put down. And then the 4th one was the one that actually ended up kicking him out and killing him. Some coworkers are yearning for it. You'll scoot to bed. Cool, Lumpy. Yeah, if you just send me a message to ping me and remind me, I'll send it to you if you can't find it. You got to be alert and well rested to handle strong acid in the morning. Yeah, Lumpy, as always, be careful in the lab. Be careful. So, Haegong is dead, and actually Shilla is ending. So let us switch to a new topic. Nope, I clicked the wrong button. The Uyghurs. Dun dun dun. According to contemporary comics, the way you build a strong Korea is to travel to Sichuan and martial arts a bunch of drunk vagabonds until you start to float. Then you return home and just slap everyone in the face until they realize your social policy is the best. Junk Collector, that sounds fascinating. Unfortunately, I have no idea what you're talking about. Is this like a Korean comic book, or is this a Japanese manga or something, or what's the origin of this? That does sound really interesting, though. Contemporary Korean fantasy is crazy, as evidenced by the story there. Now, we're going to zoom out a little bit, quite literally zoom out a little bit, and we're going to look over here at Northern Asia for just a little bit. So if you'll remember me spieling a little bit at the beginning, I mentioned the Second Turkish Khaganate. And here it was. So this is the rule of the Go-Turks at the time. And you'll note that they're bordering our kingdoms of Balhae over here, and Shilla's right over here. Yeah, it's pretty big. Now you go, oh, this is a gigantic empire. Here's the thing to remember about the Go-Turks. They were semi-nomadic. Now they have a few cities. Yeah, it's pretty empty. The area is much more impressive in size than their population. Their population is small. It's mostly spread out. They don't have a lot of big cities. And they're typically only going to bunch up in any given point under the ruler to do some sort of big invasion or big raid. So it is lots of empty grassland. So the size belittles its actual... it's not the world's most verdant land, right? If you're people that are going to be grazing horses for a living, you got to have a lot of space, right? So in the Second Turkish Khaganate, we find the Uyghur people. Now, they had been loosely allied with the Go Turks at one point. They had also been loosely allied with China at one point. And when China goes up to sort of beat up on especially the Western Khaganate, the Uyghurs are going to tag along with them because they saw an opportunity for expansion. Specifically, this is a bit of a hypothesis. I should not say this as fact. It is hypothesized that they were hoping that when China destroyed the Western Turkish Khaganate, that the Uyghurs might kind of get some of that territory for themselves. It didn't actually happen, though. They're going to end up fighting with the Go Turks after the establishment of the Second Turkish Khaganate, especially when the Tibetans invade. So the Tibetans are going to invade north into the Turkish region, and the Uyghurs are going to assist the Go Turks at that point. But when China gets more powerful and the Turks start looking a little bit vulnerable, the Uyghurs are going to decide that it's kind of go time. And during the early 30s and into the late 30s and early 40s, the Uyghurs are going to start kind of a systematic takeover of the Turkish Khaganate. And they're going to do this mostly by picking off one little ruler at a time. So there's an overlord, right? The Kagan himself, the ruler. And then you have lots of little kind of khans that are running around. And the Uyghurs decide that what you do is you could go chop the head off the snake, and that's one way to kill the whole body. Or you can just hunt them down in little groups because, again, these people are really spread out over a big area. So you just find one and you kill him, and over time you're denying the central power, the central Kagan of his supporters. And then when he shows up to try to kill you, you just run away, right? Because you're running into this giant open field. And what's really interesting is that the Chinese start recognizing that the Uyghurs are doing this. And the Chinese really approve of this because the Go Turks had been once under their control, and the Go Turks had then expanded outside of Chinese control. And China's like, you know what, if we can get in really good with these Uyghurs here, and the Uyghurs kill all the Turks, this will be good because we'll have friends on our border again. And the Uyghurs kind of get behind this. And what's really interesting is that the Uyghurs will start finding these little small rulers of the Go Turks and chop their heads off, and they start sending the heads down to China as gifts. So like the Chinese emperor sitting there in the mail, and he's asking his chamberlain, like, oh, what do we got today? And he's like, oh, we got some letters from Shilla. They're complaining about, Balhae or whatever. We've got some notes from the Tibetans who are threatening to invade us again. And, oh, there's another head from the Uyghurs. And like, oh, who is it? And it's like, oh, it's this guy. Oh, I hated that guy. I'm glad they sent me his head. So like, who sends a head? I almost titled the stream tonight, What's in the Box? But I didn't know how many people would get that. So no one ever sends me heads. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a good thing, right? That would have been a great title. Yeah. Sometimes I just don't know, though. Kind of like the cat leaving a dead animal on your doorstep. Yeah. Kind of, sort of. Anyway, what does a Uyghur king look like? Well, there you go. This is what a Uyghur king looks like. This is a very old painting that's done on silk, which is why it's falling apart here. But pretty cool looking stuff here. Now, if you have seen pictures of people like Mongolians, you go, hey, this looks kind of like a Mongolian. Well, the Uyghurs are going to be different, ethnically speaking, than the Mongols, but they're going to be very close to each other, geographically speaking, and there's pretty clearly some intermarriage between the two groups. And later on, when the Mongolian Empire is going to expand, during the 1000s and into the 1100s, one of the groups that's going to fall in with them are the Uyghurs. So there are going to be a lot of Uyghur people in the larger Mongolian Empire. So there we go. Now, by 745, the Uyghurs had effectively ended the Göturk Khaganate. So the Göturks are now gone, and the Uyghurs have set up their own territory. That's pretty big. And if we look at their map, you can see that these dudes have really, really expanded here. Now, you can see other people here like the Kyrgyz, Mongol people. We mentioned the Khitan earlier. We mentioned the Jurchen. Now, note here, this says Bohai. Bohai is the Chinese name for Balhae that we talked about at the beginning. I should note that Balhae is what it's referred to in Chinese. I'm sorry, in Korean. The Chinese name for the kingdom is Bohai, but it's the same group. Just to keep that from being a confusion situation. If you're like, but I thought that was Balhae. It is. They just expanded around all of this area. All right, so this is the Uyghur Khaganate. Big chunk of territory, and they're pretty powerful. Now, they're going to be very good friends with Chinese. They're going to fight with Chinese against the Tibetans pretty frequently. And a really interesting thing here, religiously speaking, one of their rulers is a guy named Tengri Bogu. I can put his name up here for you. Tengri Bogu. One of the military expeditions that he's on is taking over some of these people, and on the way he runs into a guy that is a Manichaean. So I don't know how much you all know about ancient religions or stuff like that, but there was an ancient religious figure that lived up here on the coast of the Black Sea whose name was Mani. And he had been a leader of a group of people called the Manichaeans, who had started a whole bunch of quasi-Christian cult activity. Manichaeism spread pretty broadly into northern Africa, into this region, but it also hooked into the Silk Road. And there were Manichaeans all the way up here in Central Asia and even all the way over into China. And under Tengri Bogu, the Uyghur Khaganate converts to Manichaeism, which is one of the only times you have a head of state openly converting to Manichaeism in history. And I don't know how much you all know about Manichaeism. We didn't do a stream on it because it's never really more than a cult, except for this one point where it gets really popular amongst the Uyghurs. It's kind of an offshoot version of Christianity. The biggest difference is that they believed that anybody could be imbued with divine inspiration. And one of the things that they did to sort of invoke this was have lots of big parties and stuff, including really big orgies, which of course doesn't sit very well with mainline Christian theology. But they believed in this sort of like spontaneous inspiration of the Spirit and communion of the fellowships, if you will. Did they believe in 747 jets? Probably not. I don't think they believed in flight as a human thing either. But the particular reason why I wanted to write this guy's name down here, Tengri Bogu, his first name, Tengri, is actually a deity of its own. So Tengri was one of the gods that was worshipped a lot in the steppe region. So much so that later on, most of the Mongolian leadership is going to be a practitioner of Tengrism, which is the religion of Tengri. Tengri is a really cool god, and when we get to the Mongols, well, actually, we've already done a viewer request stream on the Mongols, so you can go back and watch it. But this guy named Tengri was pretty clearly named Tengri Bogu because he was a devotee of Tengri. So you're going to get this one, this follower of one sort of niche regional religion that converts to being a follower of this other interesting niche religion. And it's just, stuff like this is really fascinating to me because it shows this weird overlap of cultures that is the sort of Central Asian region right here. This region gets no love in world history, but I love it so much. One of the places that I'm sort of low-key, not low-key, trying to convince Brittany to go to with me is Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan would be amazing to go to. And cheap. Well, getting there is expensive. Staying there for a while is actually pretty cheap because the dollar is pretty strong there. But anyway, so that is all that I had planned for the night. But as always, if you all have questions or if you want to do point redemptions or stuff like that, now is the time to do so. Otherwise, we're going to go see who we're going to raid. Okay. I actually forgot, because I forgot to do this on Tuesday. I was so sleepy on Tuesday that I forgot to get a viewer request for next time. So I'm going to go down the list. I have a list of people who have told me that they want to buy viewer request streams. So if you were on the list and I call your name, make yourself known. Top of the list is David Peterson. David Peterson, are you here? I know Lumpy just went to bed. So he would be second on the list. If David is not here, JMR Killer, are you here? If JMR Killer is not here, Nixolotl, are you here? And if Nixolotl is not here, I bet my lovely wife is here. So David, are you here? Lumpy went to bed. JMR, Nixolotl. These are people that have specifically said, I want to buy a viewer request stream. But I'm going in order. It's like I typed them, and I'm going in order as they appear on the list. So I am trying to be as fair as possible. Okay, last call for David, JMR, or Nixolotl. Otherwise, I'll turn the point redemption on. And I'll let Brittany buy one. All right. Brittany, it is yours to buy if you want it. There we go. So what are we doing on the next viewer request stream? I can't remember which one you wanted to do. Labor unions in America. Huh, that'll be interesting. Okie dokie. We can do it. The history of unions. Sounds good. Okay. We'll probably start that one back in history. Like we'll go out of like the early. Yeah, we'll probably start with like early guilds in the colonies because that's where they really kind of start. History of why women's clothings don't have pockets. That's because of Big Purse. Like instead of Big Pharma, it's Big Purse. Big Purse lobbies clothes companies to not put pockets on there. So you know, if you have pockets, you can put stuff in there, and it's all about fancy stuff. You know. Have I heard about the famous glass island? Oh, Murano. Yeah, so that's outside of Venice. Yeah, I have heard about it, but I have not been there. I've been to Venice twice, but I have never been out to Murano. So that would be really cool. So glass making is a tradition in Venice that goes way, way, way back. Like way, way, way back. And Murano Island is where a lot of that stuff sort of got its start. Venice, by the way, is actually a collection of several islands that's out in a lagoon. It's one city, but if we just zoom in to Venice, it's actually kind of just a big marshy place. I know I'm there, right? Yeah, okay. I thought so. Anyway, so like all of these little islands are part of Venice. And this is the big two islands right here, but all of these other little islands used to be part of the larger settlement of Venice. It's like this guy up here is Murano. And you can see like it's still pretty densely packed today. I have only ever been to the big main island right here. Now I've been in boats that are going down the canals here, but I've never actually been over to Murano. But this is sort of like the place to go if you want fine glassware. Pretty cool stuff though. I'd love to go over that way. The biggest issue with me going back to Venice, it has become a tourist trap. They dredged out the canal so that big, like the super big cruise ships can go in. Oh, yeah. And basically, the last time I went there, it was tourist hell. The boats unload, and it is swarms of people that are just as obnoxious as you think they could be. We went the first time we went. My wife and I went in 2012. No, it wasn't 2012. When was that? Anyway, we went and it was nice. We got lost because we didn't know where we were, and we didn't have smartphones. But we had a good time. The second time we went was with my father-in-law and my mother-in-law, and oh man, it's just so friggin' different. Got to cater to the worst people willing to part with that much money. Yeah, pretty much. In a classic obnoxious way. Yeah, absolutely. That hurts. You've always wanted to go, but you hate tourists and you try not to be one. I understand that, Allie. I'm the same kind of way. Getting lost in Venice is part of the fun of Venice. This is true. And what's crazy is like we could see where we wanted to go and we couldn't get there because like none of the roads intersect on right angles, and none of the bridges are where you think they could be. And you could look across and some of the canals are only like 10 feet across, and you're like, I just need to get right there. And then you kind of look down and you can't see a bridge. You don't know where the bridge is. And they have all of these really junky signs that are like, just go this way. But then like the signs stop showing you where to go, and you're just supposed to intuit which direction to go. You're standing in this little circle and there are 8 different paths. And it's like, I have no memory of this place. You're just like Gandalf in Khazad-dûm, right? And you don't have all night to sit there and stare. And all the air smells foul. Doesn't matter where you go because there's just too many people. But I mean, there were lots of cool little shops that we ran into. The second best meal of my life that I ever had, which was the best meal of my life that I ever had prior to going to Italy the second time, was in Venice. It was date night. My wife and I were sitting on the side of the Grand Canal at a little cafe, and that was just such amazing freaking food. Like seafood that they had caught in the lagoons that day that they were making in the kitchen that they had just cleaned. Oh my gosh, it was so good. Oh man, I had squid. Oh, and it was the good squid too. It wasn't chewy at all. You just bit into it and it just like melted because it was like buttery. Oh my gosh, it was so freaking good. And we had tiramisu. Oh my lord. And Brittany drank a half liter of wine and got fairly inebriated. So she had some chicken was it piccata that was cooked in wine? That was cooked in white wine. That she really enjoyed. Oh man, that was so good. That food was just freaking amazing. Second best meal I've ever had, and for a long time it was the best meal that I had until we went to Trentino, and then I had the best meal that's currently number one at another place in Italy, and oh my gosh, that meal was amazing too. But anyway, I'm digressing and running all over the place. So we have ourselves a topic for viewer request streams. Does anybody else want to redeem any points or anything like that? Anybody got any anything that they want to look at? Otherwise, I think we're going to go do ourselves a bit of a raid, and then I'm going to try to wind down and relax a little bit. All right, not seeing anything. Let's go raid our friend the Damage, because he's the only person streaming right now. Not that I wouldn't raid him anyway. We raid Damage all the time. I didn't mean to say that disparagingly. But we're going to go raid Damage because he's on stream and we're on stream and it's time to raid. So thanks everybody for doing the thing. I will definitely be back next Thursday and we'll talk about Tang Dynasty China and have a good time doing that stuff. There's a possibility I'll be back around this weekend. I would say a pretty strong possibility. Brittany's got some family stuff that she's going to do on Saturday. So I'll have some hours in the afternoon where I might be trying to find something to do. And I might spend it with you all building a Gundam. But until then, thanks so much for hanging out. Thank you again, whomever lovingly and graciously donated $50. That's huge. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for the follow. We've got Marvel Captain America gave us a follow tonight, so thanks. Until then, everybody, take care of yourself. Remember to hug the people that you love, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy.